Happy New Year and welcome to another episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl, Stephanie Hardy. If this is your first time listening, welcome and thank you for joining the ride. And if this isn't your first time listening, thank you for being consistent and for listening to me for all this time. And I hope that in this new year, we can make new discoveries together and find out new wrestling stories together and just be able to grow together in general. So, of course, with this episode, I've got your news and gossip-ish. And I have a special story time where I'm going to talk about all of my favorite moments in wrestling from the past year. And we know 2020 was a crazy and arduous year, but there was some good things that did happen in wrestling. So I'm going to talk about all of my favorite moments there. And then I'm going to do a weekly recap, which is going to be a little bit different this time. I'm going to recap Monday Night Raw, which was last Monday and last year now. And I'm going to talk about AEW in the wake of the passing of Brodie Lee. They did a special episode paying tribute to him. And I'm going to do a recap of SmackDown. So sit back, relax, and listen to this new 2021 episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. Okay, so now we're going to start with our first news and gossipish segment of the new year. That was me doing an air horn noise. Forgive me. Anyway, so we're going to start with talking about Pat McAfee and how he shot down a rumor that he was fired and or taken off of NXT television. So on social media, there was this rumor that he may or may have been taken off of NXT television and or fired. So he addressed the rumors because David Meltzer released and reported that he'd been pulled from NXT programming, and he noted that it was WWE's decision and not McAfee's, and that McAfee would likely be back in the spring. So then Pat tweeted the day after Christmas and said, "I think I got fired on Christmas," and he took pictures of this Twitter account called Wrestling Headlines at Rest Headlines, and they had a new report saying that he was pulled from NXT TV and a bunch of reasons as to why it happened. So he stated on the Pat McAfee show that maybe everything that guy is saying is close to accurate, but that doesn't mean I should have to read on the internet all day Christmas that NXT has just written me off of television for the rest of my life. And what's so weird about it is the fact that we haven't seen him since NXT take over War Games, right? Where the Undisputed Era defeated his team that he had with Pete Dunne and the NXT Tag Team Champions, Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch, right? So it's possible that maybe they're just keeping him off television until, they want to either continue the feud with the Undisputed Era or make him do something else. I don't know. But to sort of jump to the conclusion that he's been taken off television and possibly might have been fired is just kind of like, jumping all the way to conclusions that haven't even been met yet. And if he was released, I'm pretty sure they would have released a statement saying, "Oh, well, Pat McAfee's been released. We'll wish him the best in our future endeavors, blah, blah, blah. Y'all know the deal." So that was just kind of weird. So here's hoping that Pat McAfee will show back up at some point and that he's not fired. Also in the news, we have Ric Flair talking about wanting a big retirement match for Triple H. So by now, it's well documented that Triple H and Ric Flair are the best of friends. They worked backstage a whole lot, and then they were put together in the group Evolution, if you remember that, with Randy Orton and Batista. Sort of like the Four Horsemen of sort of the 2000s, if you would think of it that way. And they're just really close friends. So Ric Flair mentioned in an interview with WWE UK that he's hoping to see him have a huge retirement match. Even if he elects to retire in the future, he deserves every bit of it and all the recognition to go with it. And he also stated that he's accomplished all this through his efforts, and he has ascended himself to a place of not just being a great worker. He's helped to impact the company with the growth of NXT, helping to see young guys get the opportunity to make the main roster, working with people on a daily basis. Plus, he's one of two or three best friends. I just saw him at Raw and at TLC and had a nice talk with him. He basically lives the kind of schedule we did in the old days. He wouldn't have it any other way. He won't miss anything, and he's always wanting to see the company grow. So as at this stage, you see Triple H more of a backstage hand, and also as a person who helps NXT to grow into what it is now. And he's sort of fostering the future. He's more of the dad now. And it's beautiful to see him in that role. But, if he does, come back into wrestling, he tends to do it only, if he really wants to do it, to sort of uplift the future, as opposed to sort of taking the spotlight off for himself. So I believe once Triple H does get to that point where he does retire, much to the chagrin of my father, more than likely, because that's his favorite wrestler, it'll be something big, and it'll be something worthy of someone who's been with the company as long as he has. Just last year, he celebrated his 25th anniversary. So if he goes a few more years and decides at year 30 he wants to retire, then I'm pretty sure they'll do it in a beautiful way that is worthy of the respect that he is worthy of, so he can go on and be more of the NXT dad that he's grown to be now. Also in the news, we have not Triple H, but Booker T talking about how he thinks that Sting should not wrestle. So as you may or may not know, Sting made his debut on AEW during their special Winter is Coming a few weeks back, and he's wrestling with AEW with a full-time deal. But his fellow Hall of Fame buddy Booker T doesn't think it's a good idea for him to step into the ring for another match. He stated in an interview with Chris Van Vliet that he said, for Sting to want a match, I wouldn't advise it, okay? At 61 years old, I wouldn't advise it. Is it worth it? I don't know. I mean, to him, it might be worth it. But I say wrestling is a young man's sport. That's why I got out. I said I was going to retire when I was 40. And when I turned 40, I was like, I'm still pretty good, man. I'm still better than the rest of these suckers on the roster. So I pushed it until I was 45, and then I walked away from it. And I tell you, I don't ever itch to put my boots back on to go out there and ever do that again. So the AEW president, Tony Khan, said that Sting's contract with AEW is full-time and for multiple years, but he did not fully indicate whether he would be an in-ring competitor. And then what's so weird about it is the fact that Sting got injured in a match with Seth Rollins in 2015, which led to him retiring from in-ring competition when he got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. But now he's back in AEW, and he could be a competitor, or he could be, fostering the future. Who knows? He did show up on AEW this past Wednesday on the Brodie Lee tribute episode to mix it up with Team Taz. So we have yet to see where that's going to go. But, if he wants to wrestle, I just hope that he's, just going to play it safe and not hurt himself anymore. Because I would hate to see him wind up being, in a wheelchair or just hurt really bad. I love Sting from a very deep childhood place, and I just don't want to see him get hurt in any major way. And finally in the news, to end it on a sort of positive but sort of sad note, Brodie Lee Jr., aka -1, has been signed to an AEW contract for the future. Now, if you may or may not know, Brodie Lee, whose real name was John Huber, but also known as Luke Harper in the WWE as part of the Wyatt family, passed away this past Saturday at the age of 41 due to a non-COVID related lung issue that he had been battling since this past October. And he left behind his wife and 2 sons. And one son, he has, they call him Brodie Lee Jr. And he showed up on the AEW tribute episode this past Wednesday dressed in a Dark Order mask. And he was actually in some of the storylines that were going on the show, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But they've decided to sign him to a contract with plans of putting him on the company's roster when he's of age, and this was announced by Tony Schiavone on his What Happened When podcast. And Tony Schiavone is a legendary commentator from WCW, and now he's on AEW. So Schiavone quoted as to say, knowing that Brodie was very sick and knowing it was holiday time, and I guess knowing that for him to kick out, it was going to be, I don't want to say a miracle, but it was going to be very difficult to kick out. They had brought little Brodie to TV, and wrestling is his life. He's 8 years old. He's a great kid, and they made him a member of the Dark Order. They put a mask on him. He came out with a kendo stick. He beat up a lot of people. This, of course, was at a TV taping with nobody in the audience. They signed him to a contract. They legitimately signed him to a contract. And when he gets of age, he will be with AEW. They have taken care of him, and he follows guys around all the time in the back, and he's become a part of us. And also, he ceremoniously won the AEW World Championship during a dark television taping by getting Kenny Omega to tap out earlier this month. And Justin Roberts, their ring announcer for AEW, proclaimed Lee Jr. as the new champion. And what's so beautiful about this entire situation with him losing his father in such a sad manner, you see that since he was in the hospital since October, nobody really knew. He had been off television for months. With them taking care of his son the way that they have, it's been absolutely beautiful to see how this wrestling family has just come to surround this family with nothing but love and support during this incredibly difficult time. And thoughts and prayers are with the Huber family and definitely with his friends that he made across all promotions in WWE, AEW, and in the independent circuit, definitely. It's been beautiful to see how they've just surrounded this family with all the love and support that they'll need to get through this difficult time. Like, they're entering a new year without their person, and it's just a really sad situation. But the silver lining, if there's any silver lining in all of this, is the fact that Brodie Lee Jr. has a family that's going to always remind him of who his father was and the kind of man his father was, and they're going to surround him with love and foster him into this wrestling business if he has a mind to do it once he gets of age. So I can't wait to see what's next for him, for this beautiful little boy, and, you know, his brother, and for his wife as well, who's having to sort of keep this family together through all of this after losing her best friend. And that's the end of News and Gossipish, and now we're going to talk about my favorite moments from wrestling this year, the EST of 2020. The EST of 2020. These are my favorite moments of last year. Like, 2020 was a crazy year in more ways than one. We had to fight a global pandemic. Everything got shut down. So many people lost so much. People lost jobs. People lost family members. People just lost a lot of everything. People had a lot of fear. Like, 2020 revealed a lot about our human nature, and it revealed a lot about ourselves. And I'm pretty sure we all learned something about ourselves in the midst of all the lessons that we learned from last year. It wasn't necessarily the best year, but it had its moments of light. And that's something that I have, tried to make it my mission to discuss on the show, is all the positive parts of all the craziness and the darkness that tends to go on in life. And in wrestling, one of the beautiful parts about being a fan was the fact that I got to see how resilient wrestling actually is. Like, when the chips are down and when just about every other sport and everything else was canceled, wrestling was able to maintain itself and maintain a level of beauty and a level of entertainment, and actually up the ante when it comes to their entertainment, that I wasn't sure how they were going to do it, but somehow or another it did, and it was absolutely wonderful to see. Even though there were a couple of people outside of the wrestling world who were sort of throwing shade at it because they didn't necessarily understand it as much. Here's looking at you, DJ Envy and Charlemagne from the Breakfast Club. Love y'all, but y'all were throwing shade at wrestling. Anyway, and also people like Kenny Smith from ESPN, who was throwing shade at wrestling, but then wound up being on The Bump. But we're not going to discuss that either. It's just, even with some of the people who may not have understood it, there were still people who were still seeking to learn about it, as they became more fascinated with it, even in my own life. So I'm really happy with where wrestling is now and how it just rose to the occasion of giving us something to look at when the rest of the world was just turning sideways. So I'm going to talk about all of my favorite moments from the year 2020 in wrestling. So we're going to start with the Royal Rumble, which is basically how this podcast started. My favorite moment was definitely Edge's return. When he came back after 9 years of not being in action, it was just absolutely wonderful to hear his music hit. And this was pre-pandemic, so this was when there was a crowd in that stadium, the Minute Maid Park. And this was also the day where sadly we lost Kobe and Gigi and those other people who were on the helicopter. And I was just completely out of it while watching this pay-per-view. But seeing Edge return just sort of knocked me back into the swing of being, happy about a thing to take place on that day. And it's just when his music hit, it was just absolutely incredible to just see him come back because, like I've said probably multiple times on this show, I saw his last match at WrestleMania 27 in Atlanta. So to see him come back at the Royal Rumble and then have a run with Randy Orton, in their matches and stuff like that, it was just really cool. And I also enjoyed Bianca Belair's record-setting performance in the Women's Royal Rumble match. She eliminated a good number of women. I forgot the exact number. I think it was about maybe 9 or 10 women in that match. And I really wanted her to go on and win the whole thing. But, it was all about Charlotte, who was set to win that Royal Rumble that year and face Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's title. But seeing her perform, in that match in front of an audience who may or may not have been as familiar with her was definitely, some great icing on the cake for me. And it's always all about Black excellence. So I was excited to see her do that. And also in the theme of Black excellence, we had Naomi return at the Royal Rumble, and she returned with her beautiful natural hair, and she came back and wound up actually matching up with Charlotte in that match and having her Kofi moment in that match as well. And the best part about her returning in the Royal Rumble was the fact that she went viral, amongst women who hadn't watched wrestling in so long, amongst Black women who may not have ever watched wrestling, but she went viral because she came back with her beautiful natural hair and brought a whole new audience to wrestling who may not have otherwise watched it. And she was even featured, in Essence magazine with a article about her and her natural hair, along with Mia Yim and Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks. And that meant the world to me because being a Black woman who also reads Essence magazine, and other publications of that sort, it meant the world to me to sort of see those things cross over. So that was really amazing. And then the pandemic happened, and then there was the shutdown. So we were wondering, how was wrestling going to continue to go on without its fans? Because there was only one documented moment where WWE had an event where there weren't any fans there. And we just didn't know how that was going to happen because when it comes to wrestling events, fans are the lifeblood. They're sort of like the secondary character amongst all the wrestlers who come out and fight in front of us. It's like you got the wrestlers, you got the referee, you have the commentators, you have the camera people, and then you have the people backstage who help run the show, and then you have the fans. And really, for the first time in my lifetime, I was never, I was just concerned about how this was going to happen. And I was also emotionally sort of torn up at the idea that I wasn't going to be able to go to a wrestling event, for the first time, in so long in my life, because I've been to about 20 wrestling events in my life from my childhood on to now. And I had just never gotten used to it, but you had to in terms of safety. So I was just wondering, how are they going to go on? But they found a way, and they moved everything to the Performance Center at that time in Orlando, Florida, and just kept pushing, and it was wonderful. And also, outside of wrestling, you had the XFL, that started this year, but then they wound up going bankrupt because of the pandemic. But then they wound up getting bought by The Rock and his ex-wife, Dany Garcia. And now they're going to reboot that sometime either this year or next year. But I believe probably next year once we can get crowds going again. So another great moment that I really loved during this pandemic era was the beef between Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose. And something that I thought was really interesting and that I really didn't necessarily like was the fact that during the Slammy Awards, they weren't nominated for Best Feud or Best Rivalry. And they were replaced with Lana. Well, not replaced, but they favored putting Lana and announce tables in that category, but didn't put Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose in that category. And that was very disappointing because that feud was very hot when it happened. Like, I mean, you had Mandy who was falling in love with Otis while she was also sort of, going back and forth with Dolph Ziggler. And the only reason Dolph Ziggler was going out with her was because Sonya put him up to it. And Sonya was like, it was always the focus on you being the pretty one and the beautiful one, and nobody focused on me when I'm the better athlete. And that feud was amazing. Like, when they broke up and when it was revealed that she really felt like she was incredibly selfish and all of that after the mystery person who turned out to be Mustafa Ali, revealed those plans to break up her and Otis, it was just really hot. And it deserves more credit than it actually gets. I know it sort of got lost in the shuffle with everything else that they had going on that was just white hot at the time, but it deserved more credit, for what it did. And then it led to them having their match at SummerSlam where the loser had to leave WWE. And Mandy Rose wound up winning, but it really showed more of what Sonya Deville was able to do. As a heel, you saw more of her veracity and her personality, with that. And of course, she did have to leave because she had to deal with the incident that happened where that person broke into her house and all that. But I hope that at some point she will come back and show more of what she has to offer, whether that be on Raw or SmackDown. I would hope she comes back to Raw because I would love to see Mandy Rose, sort of pick up that feud again, and put more gas behind that. But, we had to wait and see for that because it's still a new year and everything could happen there. Also, I really loved Otis and Mandy getting together, starting with Valentine's Day. And then going towards WrestleMania where he fought Dolph Ziggler and beat him. And then Otis wound up Mandy Rose wound up choosing Otis and they wound up dating. That was really one of the best parts of the year too. It was really cute to see this beautiful bombshell of a woman choose this average guy who has a great heart, but doesn't necessarily look like the type of guy that she would, go for. It just goes to show you that when it comes to love, there's really no type of look that sort of goes into that. Like, you just fall in love with who you fall in love with. And it's just worth it to sort of see where it goes. Now, they wound up getting separated during the draft, which disappointed me, but also on social media, they still like each other's pictures and everything. And he still calls her, his beautiful peach and everything. So who's to say that it's really ever truly over in terms of television? It was still really cute to see it play out and all of that. It was just really beautiful. So also we had Bianca Belair's, Black History in the Making outfit at NXT TakeOver Portland. She was set to face Rhea Ripley, who had all of her focus on Charlotte Flair, but Bianca Belair was going after one last run at the NXT Women's title, and she was telling her, you need to focus on me. So they went to fight each other at NXT TakeOver Portland, and she is well known for making her outfits all the time, but she came out here with this beautiful purple and gold outfit that had Black History in the Making all over it, and she had this cape that said Black History in the Making. Sort of reminded you of Randy Savage and his capes that he used to come out with back in the day. And she looked absolutely beautiful in this outfit, and I made a whole episode about it, so please go listen to Black History in the Making if you have a mind to. But this is a beautiful moment, for her sort of stepping out and showing more of what she had to offer athletically against someone like Rhea Ripley. And even though she sort of got tossed to the side after Rhea Ripley beat her and Charlotte beat both of them up, and we were sort of hoping there was going to be a triple threat for the NXT Women's title between all three of them, it wound up only being Rhea versus Charlotte. But Bianca went on to make her debut during WrestleMania by beating up Zelina Vega, who was trying to interfere between, the whole tag team picture that they had with Andrade and Angel. So that was still really cool too. And I just hope nothing but great things for her now that she's on SmackDown. And she might very well possibly get in contention for the SmackDown Women's Championship against Sasha Banks. That is if they don't win the women's tag team titles at some point. Who knows? So that was a really cool thing to see. Also, one of my favorite things to see this year was Keith Lee winning the NXT title and being double champion with the North American title, even if it was only for a short time, because he wound up relinquishing the North American title to give the rest of the NXT roster a chance at that title. And even though he was NXT champion for a short time, because he went on to lose it to Karrion Kross, who went on to relinquish it due to injury, it was still amazing to see him have his moment in the sun after he had endured some personal loss in his life from losing his coach that he did talk about in his WWE Chronicle, which I do recommend you go watch. It was still a beautiful moment to see him win that title and retain the North American title against someone like Adam Cole, who had basically become the longest reigning NXT champion at that point. So that was a beautiful moment for him to sort of tie up with the only person who's ever held double titles, which is Paige, because she was the NXT Women's Champion, actually the first NXT Women's Champion, and she went on to win the Divas Championship, and she was double champion for a short while until she had to relinquish the NXT Women's Championship at that point. Also, one of my favorite things this year was the 2-night WrestleMania thing. That was amazing. Like, it had all kinds of amazing matches. Charlotte versus Rhea was amazing. See Rhea Ripley dress up like Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z was really cool. Seeing Charlotte sort of win that title was very shell-shocking, but hey, I mean, I wasn't as angry about it as a lot of people were, but hey, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, but it was still a really good match. Then you had Seth Rollins versus Kevin Owens. I mean, my God, that match was really cool. And to see Kevin Owens jump from that giant WrestleMania sign and for it to be as iconic as it was, for them being in the Performance Center, it was still really good. And of course, seeing Drew McIntyre win the WWE title against Brock Lesnar was really cool too, because you were able to see him get his just due and become the guy, in the company after having become or being chosen as the guy by Vince McMahon a long time ago, only for him to fall off of his perch, and then his redemption story started where he got himself together, came through the indies and then went to Impact and then came back to NXT, and now he's our champion. And then he lost it and then he won it back. So, hey, I mean, you can't really beat Drew McIntyre become champion. And he went on to retain that title against the Big Show that very same night. So that was really good too. Big ups to Drew McIntyre for having a stellar year. Also, I have to talk about my girls, Bayley and Sasha. Seeing them and their sort of slow burn as being best friends and sort of running roughshod over the women's division on all three brands was just absolutely phenomenal to see. To see them sort of help each other as these heels who were just sort of taking advantage of everything, of every opportunity they could, to go on to win the women's tag team titles from Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross was just really phenomenal and kind of nerve-wracking at times, but still phenomenal nonetheless. And then to see that sort of slow burn where you could see that Bayley was always thrusting Sasha into these situations where she would have to fight Bayley's battles, and then how Bayley would never keep that same energy for Sasha, and to finally see it all come to a head in a very unexpected way was just really beautiful, because you would always think that Sasha was going to turn heel or turn on Bayley, but it wound up being the other way around, and it wound up being Bayley turning on Sasha on my birthday. That's like the biggest flex of my life. Like, the biggest wrestling flex of my life is like that happening on my birthday, and also Monday Night Nitro debuting on my birthday, on my second birthday. Like, those are the two biggest wrestling flexes of my entire life. Like, that was just really cool to see that happen, because I was wanting them to sort of, fight each other with the same veracity as they did with NXT when they fought each other in that stellar women's wrestling match that I feel like is the greatest women's wrestling match to ever take place ever. And we can fight about it. And then to see them on their tag team run against Asuka and Kairi Sane, and the way that they were, that they sort of wrote Kairi Sane out of the story and allowed for Sasha to win the Raw Women's Championship only for a short time. And then how Sasha went on to sort of fight to fight for her respect and beat up Bayley, and beating her in their Hell in a Cell match, which was one of the best matches of last year, in my opinion. It was absolutely great to finally see Sasha sort of rise above and win, even though she had the most experience with the Hell in a Cell match. She never really won a match on pay-per-view like that before and retained the title or won a title like that. And she wound up doing that against her former best friend. And that was really, really cool. And I will never forget that. Also, another favorite part of 2020 was seeing Zelina Vega get a small push towards title contention on Raw after she left Angel Garza and Andrade. This was really cool for me to see because I always predicted after seeing her sort of, get involved with Andrade's matches as his manager, I always wanted her to go after a title and go on like her own singles push because I knew that she had the ability to do it. And she did it, for a short time, and she wound up holding her own against Asuka, for the Raw Women's title. And I wish she had the opportunity to do more as a singles competitor, but outside stuff got in the way with her whole Twitch deal. And she wound up getting released by not letting it go ever. And she unfortunately got released. And that bummed me out because she's definitely one of my favorites. And shout out to her as Thea Trinidad. That's her real name. And you can follow her on her social platforms as that. But I was really bummed to see her get released. And here's hoping that somehow she'll still find a way to make waves in the wrestling landscape wherever she decides to go. Because, man, she's just so good. And I just love her so much. And I've talked about that multiple times, so I won't fully get into it anymore, but I just hated to see her go. I also love seeing Shotzi Blackheart sort of come out as this host person in terms of Halloween Havoc and seeing more of her personality, and she's just my favorite little wrecking ball. I love her so much. I have like the weirdest, ungodliest crush on her too, but we're not going to discuss that. Also, a couple of my favorite things was Becky Lynch's pregnancy announcement, the Mysterio family, seeing Big E's single run, and now he's the Intercontinental Champion, and here's hoping that he does bigger things and actually faces Roman Reigns for the Universal title this year and maybe win the Royal Rumble or whatever. The NXT Women's War Games match, Jade Cargill and Brandy Rhodes and their beef, which wound up getting sidelined due to the fact that Brandy Rhodes is pregnant now with her child with Cody Rhodes, and congratulations to them on that. And I also loved watching Thunder Rosa and getting to know her, and also getting a chance to interview her on my show. Please check out that episode, Thunder and Havoc. And just getting to know, the independent circuit a whole lot more. That was one of my favorite moments as well. And I'll also say that I loved everything involving Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. Because, baby, when it comes to him, when Roman Reigns turned heel and got Paul Heyman on his side, he became this Samoan mob boss that you just don't ever want to cross ever. He's the head of the table, and you better recognize it. And his relationship with Jey Uso is just so abusive. Like, I literally feel like someone somewhere in psychology should watch wrestling and write like a whole dissertation or a research paper on how Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, portray familial, mental, and physical abuse, because that's literally, I feel like, something that I get out of it. I feel like that's something that I'm passionate about because I am against abuse in all forms. And I feel like if you watch this show and if you watch them and everything that they did, it just showed, abuse in the worst way, because you have Jey Uso who wants to, still be in the family fold and still do everything to please Roman Reigns, but he's doing it at the expense of his dignity. And that's something to be discussed. Like, you want to, have the approval of your family if you come from a family like that. But at the same time, you're doing it, at the expense of yourself and your own identity. Like, at some point, I'm pretty sure Jey Uso is going to bust out of his, shell and destroy Roman Reigns and probably go after him again, or maybe leave, But it's looking like that's not happening now. And he's just fully embracing the whole, wacky thing. But Jey Uso has done a phenomenal job, as a solo competitor, because, we always grew up seeing him as, the other twin brother with Jimmy. And now he's just done more than that. And it's just really great to see. And honestly, I just want to see The Rock, come back and do the whole tribal chief. I'm the head of the table in the Samoan dynasty, blah. But hey, we just got to wait and see what 2021 brings, huh? And also, I loved Carmella and how she returned. And I know this is unpopular to say, but I don't care. I loved Carmella and how she returned with a little bit more veracity as well as a heel, because, she's sort of, we've seen her as a heel before, but I feel like now she's sort of, this snobbish heel that likes to drink champagne and be this, glamour girl. And I actually like that a whole lot for her. And I also really loved, seeing more of her personality this year with her podcast with Corey Graves, the Bear With Us podcast, and how, they're sort of, known as Matt and Leah, which is their real names, as a couple. And they're really cute as a couple. I actually like them together, and I wish nothing but great things for them. I hope they stay together and get married and have an amazing wedding. But, let's just move past that. I loved everything that Carmella did this year. And I know a lot of people, tend to come down on her because they don't feel like she's that good of a wrestler, or they feel like she's fake because of all the, surgeries that she has done. But, why are we shaming women for what they do with their bodies in 2021? Let's stop that. Women need to stop doing it, and men definitely need to stop doing it. But we just need to stop doing that in general. So she's still, really good in my book, and I really loved her and appreciated her. And also, something else that I really loved this year was connecting with wrestling fans from all over the world, like with this podcast. Like, I never thought that I would be able to interview, someone like BJ from Australia, and shout out to him and Aussie Lucian. And I never thought that I would talk to so many people from all over the country who love wrestling just as much as I do. And that happened to me this year. And that was really great to connect with other wrestling podcasters who've welcomed me into this big family. And interviewing, with them, with people like Miranda Morales and people like Rob from the Bob Culture podcast, and connecting with people like Derek with Rap and Wrestle and Wrestling IQ 101. Connecting with people like that, and then interviewing on the Jobber Tears podcast, which is, in my opinion, one of the greatest Black wrestling podcasts that exists now. That meant the world to me. And shout out to Sir Wilkins and Mr. Black and Janelle. I love all three of you guys so much, and I look up to you guys. I love y'all so much. And it's just, I just hope that more of that, continues to happen in my life. And seeing some of my guests, succeed in wrestling, like Promise Braxton. She was my first female guest, and she went on to win the Reality of Wrestling Diamonds Championship. Seeing stuff like that just means the world to me, to know that I've had the most gifted wrestlers on my show, and to see them continue to succeed, and to see Thunder Rosa in this feud with Britt Baker and how she beat her up, this past Wednesday. Seeing stuff like that just means the world to me. And I'm just really glad that all of this has happened, this year. So those are some of my favorite things that have happened in 2020. And of course, I'm going to talk more about how AEW's tribute episode to Brodie Lee, that's definitely one of my favorite things that happened in wrestling. It was very heartfelt. And I'm going to talk more about that in the AEW recap. But that was my EST list of 2020. And now we're going to go to the recap of Monday Night Raw. Okay, so I was sitting with my friends one day and they asked me, Stephanie, how do you record your podcast? And I said, with the Anchor app on my phone. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. It is absolutely free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and your computer. And it will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's got everything you need to make a podcast in one place. They even have classes and stuff that you can listen to that will give you all kinds of good tips on what you need to do in order to make the best podcast. So if you want to do this, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm, or download the free Anchor app to get started. Okay, so now we're going to do a weekly recap, and we're going to start with Monday Night Raw. And as usual, something that isn't going to change is that I start with the girls. So Shayna Baszler and Dana Brooke had a match, and Mandy Rose, who has returned, came out to be in Dana Brooke's corner. So Shayna, I kind of felt like in this match it was a little bit of a mismatch, because you kind of have someone like Dana Brooke, who is a great athletic, wrestler, up against someone who has an MMA background and who knows how to tear people apart, limb from limb, like Shayna Baszler. And even though I did kind of feel like it was a mismatch, it was still okay in the idea that Dana wasn't just letting her run her over. So Shayna kind of started the match, attacking Dana Brooke's left arm, and she just targeted it over and over again. And then she wanted to possibly like break it, and she was doing it in front of Mandy Rose, who she basically injured a couple weeks ago. But then Dana Brooke was still trying to fight out of it, but yet Shayna Baszler was trying to beat up on Mandy Rose a whole lot. But then, as she was distracted, Dana Brooke hit this incredibly impressive spinning net breaker. But then after the 2 count, Shayna Baszler kicked out and then caught Dana Brooke with a knee strike into the Karafuda clutch for the win. And then Shayna Baszler pulled in Mandy Rose to make her tap out to the Karafuda clutch as well. So there was really not that much it was a pretty good match, but at the same time it wasn't anything like overly impressive. Shayna Baszler basically dominated the 2 girls, and this wouldn't be the last time we would see her during the night, because Nia Jax had a match versus Charlotte. And Asuka was in Charlotte's corner because, of course, they're the women's tag team champions. And, of course, Shayna Baszler was in her corner. So Nia Jax was backstage with Charlotte Caruso, and she stated that she was going to enter the Royal Rumble, even though she was sort of focused on Charlotte Flair, because she was the one who actually injured her, and that she was happy to actually fight her. And then Shayna Baszler said that she was going to throw her hat in the ring for the Royal Rumble as well. So Nia Jax here just wasn't ready for Charlotte, who's basically fresh and ready to fight now since she's been gone. Asuka took out Shayna Baszler on the outside, while Charlotte went for the figure 8, only to get bashed head first into the turnbuckle, which looked kind of bad. Like, there was a second where I thought Charlotte got injured, but I guess she didn't, because she kept going. And then Nia began to dominate and take advantage of that, and then she planted Charlotte with a powerbomb, and then barely missed a leg drop. And then Shayna Baszler took out Asuka and then saved Jax from a figure 8, and then she locked in the Karafuda clutch on Charlotte, and then Asuka saved Charlotte from the hold and then sent them running. So basically, Charlotte won this match by disqualification. And I understand that maybe Nia and Shayna want to, have a rematch for the women's tag team titles, but I'm a little bit irritated with them being a team and just sort of acting like they could just railroad everybody and run over everybody. I'm a little bit tired of them as a team, and I'm sort of looking forward to them possibly breaking up at some point, because with the Royal Rumble coming along, it's like, it's really not a tag team thing. That's more of a every woman and every man for themselves. So I'm kind of just looking forward to Nia and Shayna finally just breaking up and just, going their separate ways and being singles competitors again. So along with that, we had an entire saga with Alexa Bliss demanding a match with Randy Orton after watching him sort of destroy the Firefly Funhouse. She invited him to her playground, which kind of sounds dirty, but we're not going to go into that. But Randy Orton didn't answer, even though his music started playing, but she was just like, I guess he doesn't want to come. But then instead, the screen came on and Randy Orton was in the Firefly Funhouse. And he basically proceeded to tear up and destroy every one of Bray Wyatt's friends in the house. Like, he basically tore up Rambling Rabbit, who seems to have like 1 billion lives left after he gets destroyed and or killed. He hit Huskus in the head or something like that, and then I looked away for a few seconds and I didn't get a chance to see what he did to Sister Abigail. So basically, you know, he just tore up the Firefly Funhouse, which is something he just likes to do. And Alexa Bliss was basically shook by him tearing up the house. So she challenged him to a match and then he accepted it. So basically we'll fast forward to the end where they were standing in the ring together, and Randy was demanding that Bray Wyatt shows his face because he has basically been absent over the past couple of weeks after he got set on fire at TLC. And then Alexa grabbed a massive present and opened it in front of Randy Orton, and then she pulled out a gas can and matches and challenged Randy Orton to set her on fire the way that he did the Fiend. And he wasn't sure really what to make of it, as she basically just proceeded to pour all the gas in the middle of the ring and all over her head and all of the above. And it was kind of creepy. I was just like, oh my God, what are you doing? And then she called him out for not being as evil and sadistic as he said he was, and basically called him a B word. And the lights began to go out the way that it does whenever the Fiend is there. But then he smiled as he lit the match. Ready. He seemed like he was ready to set Alexa on fire, but then that's where the show ended, and it went straight to the next show on USA. And it sort of left us with a cliffhanger, like, did he really set Alexa Bliss on fire? Find out next year is what they told us. So here we are, and Raw is going to have to come back on. It's going to be the first Raw of 2021, and we get to see whether or not he really did set Alexa on fire. So that's pretty much all that happened with the girls. So now we're going to go to the beginning of the show, and of course, the show started with a tribute picture for John Hubert, aka Luke Harper, and aka Brodie Lee. And as Drew McIntyre opened the show to talk about Sheamus and Keith Lee, he started by saying it's Monday and you know what that means, which is a tribute also to Brodie Lee. And then he said, yeah, it's Monday Night Raw, which is also another tribute to him, because that's something that he used to say whenever he was in the ring with his opponents in WWE to make him sound sort of like a crazy person. He'd be like, yeah, like that. So that's what he was doing. And as he was talking about Sheamus and Keith Lee, he made it clear that it didn't matter who he was going to face, that either way he was going to still come out the champion. But then Sheamus came out to make it clear that he didn't lie to Drew, only by bro kicking Keith like off of the ring after the bell last week. And then Keith Lee came out and said that Drew McIntyre's word was worth nothing after last week, and he was done working with them. And then Drew wanted a referee to come out and start the show with the number one contenders match that they had announced was supposed to happen later on in the evening. So the referee arrived, and Sheamus, hit back-to-back bro kicks on Keith Lee. But then Drew McIntyre joined commentary as the bell rang, and then Keith Lee took control once he had recovered from the pre-match attack, throwing around Sheamus like a rag doll. Then Sheamus fought back and blasted Lee onto the announce table with a top rope double axe handle. And then Sheamus held it together for a while, but then Keith Lee was just overwhelming him. And then a spine buster and a running crossbody from Keith Lee nearly put the match away. But Sheamus just wasn't looking to give up. He was trying to prove himself. Then Sheamus fought back with a white noise for a near fall. And just when it looked like neither one of them could do anymore, Keith Lee planted Sheamus with a spirit bomb to win and become the number one contender for Drew McIntyre's WWE Championship. So on the first Raw of the new year, they're going to fight each other. And it's also Legends Night on this coming Monday too. So that's going to be pretty big and pretty cool. It was good to sort of see Keith Lee get this opportunity, and I feel like it would be amazing if he actually did win. So we just have to wait and see here. So yeah, it's going to be cool. Then we had The Miz versus Grand Metalik, and this started with the house party mocking The Miz ahead of his match, calling him delusional for thinking he would get his Money in the Bank briefcase back after losing it supposedly at TLC. So The Miz looked like he was really distraught and sad from having lost his Money in the Bank briefcase, and he was angry, but he spent way too much time mocking Grand Metalik and not getting the win. So this allowed Grand Metalik to stay in the fight until he was able to roll up The Miz for a 3 count. But near the end of the night, Adam Pearce came to him and returned the Money in the Bank briefcase to him, stating that The Miz was right and that only The Miz could cash it in and not John Morrison on behalf of The Miz. So Miz is still Mr. Money in the Bank, and that little X factor is still hanging over our heads, and he can still cash it in between now and July, maybe. So yeah, The Miz is still, being his Mizzy self. So then we had this other segment involving AJ Styles with Omos, and Elias and Jackson Riker. And AJ Styles started basically accosting Elias because he was speaking on behalf of Omos, who was listening to Mozart, and he was saying that Elias's music was basically disturbing him, and his peace or whatever. And he said that he sounded like trash. And what's so funny is you had Jackson Riker, supposedly being like Elias's right-hand man or like security or whatever, but him standing up next to Omos, who's like 7 foot tall, was just absolutely ridiculous. And then Omos was staring down at him like, I wish you would. And then I believe Public Enemy's podcast, shout out to them on Twitter, actually made the tweet and said, say all lives matter one more time. And I was just like, yes, that's exactly what that should be. Because Jackson Riker pretty much said some unsavory things on his social media, which kind of led to him getting taken off of television, because he was a part of this group called the Forgotten Sons, and they got called up towards like the early part of the pandemic era last year, but then they disappeared. So now he's back with Elias now, and yeah, we just don't necessarily like him. So AJ Styles challenged Elias to a match. So this match happened. Styles wasn't really ready for the power of Elias at first, but then Elias basically threw him around, and then almost basically made sure that Riker could not take a cheap shot at Styles, and this slowed the match down enough to let AJ Styles recover. And as he fought back, he got caught with a drift away for a huge near fall. Can you imagine how amazing it would have been if Elias had gotten the win over AJ Styles, who's like a veteran? Like, that would have been amazing. Then almost encouraged the toughness of AJ Styles, who managed to unbalance his opponent and then hit the phenomenal forearm for the win. And something that I am enjoying seeing is sort of seeing AJ Styles and Omos' relationship sort of blossom into this friendship, and not just a you're my muscle and I'm the boss type of thing. It's really beautiful to see them, create this friendship, and I would look forward to seeing it every week. So yeah, like, that was just really cool. Then we had Mustafa Ali versus Ricochet. And I was pretty excited about this because the last time they fought each other, it was pretty lit. So I was just like, yeah. And then, of course, Mustafa came out with Retribution. And so Mustafa was trying to make it seem like Ricochet was going to be at his weakest if he did not join Retribution. So they showed Ricochet's interview on Raw Talk, where he explained that he could not afford to keep losing to Retribution, and Mustafa gave a pre-tape message saying that he needs to accept that he needs help to tap into, like, I guess, extra aggression, so he won't be, I guess, as weirdly irrelevant as he's been. And it's so sad because Ricochet is really talented, but he's just missing something, and I don't know what it is. But here's hoping this year he can find it. So T-Bar planted Ricochet on the outside of on the outside behind the referee's back, and then Mustafa followed up with a splash onto the floor, which looked really nasty, but it was amazing still. Then he continued the onslaught with a backstabber before Ricochet flipped over Mustafa right into an impressive German suplex. And then a fired up Ricochet planted Mustafa with a kickback, but then Mace from Retribution saved Mustafa from the pinfall. And then Ricochet went after all the members of Retribution in an incredibly impressive spot. Like, he was fighting everybody and knocked everybody down. Like, yo, it was so cool. And then he took them all out with a to set up a 630 splash, but then he landed on the knees of Mustafa, which set up Mustafa to lock in the Koji clutch for the win. And then he offered one last chance to Ricochet to join the group, but instead Ricochet landed the recoil on him and then escaped. And he made clear that he wasn't going to join him no matter what happened to him or no matter how many times he lost. And this might be setting up them fighting again. I'm not necessarily sure. But at the same time, it was really cool to see Ricochet pop off the way he did, because he's just so impressive and he's so great. Like, I feel like there's so much more to him than just him doing flippy stuff and him being a pretty boy with all of his abs and stuff. Like, I think he's really cute, and I also think Mustafa is really cute too, with his hair and all that and all of his muscles and stuff. But but that's besides the point. There's so much more to Ricochet, and I feel like, that just needs to shine through a whole lot more this year. So after that, we had the Hurt Business versus the New Day and the Hardy Bros. And I feel like that's really weird, because I feel like it should be Jeff and Matt, but Matt's at AEW. So the Hurt Business scared someone backstage and falling on the floor, and they just looked really good here with all their gold and in their suits and everything. They're just the chocolate horsemen, and it's great. So then after that, they also showed Angel Garza having a special rose for someone, but then R-Truth was running away from this crowd of wrestlers trying to get him and his 24/7 title. And when he ran into Angel Garza, he said, "I'm sorry, Angel, but me and my baby are spoken for." And then he ran away. And then the rose was torn up, and then he gave the torn up rose to Charlie. And I'm still shipping Charlie Caruso and Angel, but at the same time, I don't know. Maybe their love is dead, but then at the same time, maybe it's not dead. Maybe there's more for them to have there. Explore that love story. Give me what I want. But anyway, the New Day was backstage wearing Big E's t-shirts that said "Think Big" on it, and they were celebrating his Intercontinental Championship win on Christmas before they headed to the ring. And MVP taunted them before giving the mic to Bobby Lashley to announce his entrance into the Royal Rumble. And then also you saw, before the New Day made their entrances, they had on their Brodie bands on their arms, because they stated on social media how much Brodie Lee really meant to them and how sad they were that he passed away. Especially Xavier. You could tell he was very torn up about it on social media. Like, I wanted to give him a hug, because I just hate to see him cry. Then so during the match, Kofi Kingston and Xavier worked with fire, ready to make a statement against the Hurt Business. But then Bobby Lashley managed to get his hands on Matt Riddle and then isolate him in the heel corner and keep him away from tagging in the New Day. And then Matt Riddle battled through to get the tag to Kofi, who planted Cedric Alexander with a boom drop. And then Xavier got Cedric with a Luke Harper discus clothesline to set up the Swanton Bomb, but then Bobby Lashley broke it up. And it was really cool to see that discus clothesline as another means of paying tribute to Brodie Lee. And then he made it to Jeff Hardy to tap out. Well, no, he made Jeff Hardy tap out to the Hurt Lock. And then the face team survived a post-match attack from the Hurt Business after Matt caught Lashley with the final flash. So that was a pretty good match, and that's really all that happened on Raw. But I do have something else to say. A lot of people on social media was throwing all kinds of shade at WWE and how they weren't able to do like a full-scale tribute to John Huber, aka Brodie Lee, the way that they normally do, like OGs like Pat Patterson or Dusty Rhodes or something like that, and have people standing out there. And the one thing that I hated was seeing everyone sort of compare tributes between the promotions, when it was absolutely and abundantly clear that Brodie Lee had touched the lives of multiple people across multiple brands and multiple promotions. He was a very versatile wrestler in where he wrestled. Like, he wrestled in the indies, he wrestled in WWE, and he wrestled in AEW during the last go of his career. And something that I just absolutely hated seeing was people online comparing them. It's kind of, now, as much as I understand that you have your people who are never going to be into WWE, and then you have your people who are never going to be into AEW, but I feel like there should be a line drawn when there's a person who's passed away. There should not be any competition, going on between two to see which one did the better tribute. Because as far as I'm concerned, the very same people who were complaining about WWE's tribute would have still been just as pissed if WWE didn't do anything at all. And that's exactly what I mean. These same people would have been still angry if WWE had done nothing, or if the superstars weren't allowed, or just didn't do anything at all to acknowledge the fact that they had lost a friend. Like, it's just mind-numbing. Like, I feel like at a certain point, competition should really just stop. We should just stop and really just acknowledge the fact that wrestling is wrestling, and we should all respect each other's things that we're into and just love each other and not just try to tear each other apart. Like, someone lost her husband. Like, this woman, like Amanda, lost her husband, and her 2 children lost their daddy, and a bunch of people lost a really good friend who sounds like he was an amazing person. And I'm just gonna need for everybody to just chill out, because it's not about the competition. It's not about AEW versus NXT, or AEW versus Raw, or AEW versus SmackDown. It's about wrestling collectively as a whole losing someone who was very special. And we really just need to stop destroying each other over what we're into. We should be learning from each other and loving each other whenever times get hard. This was a time to come together and not draw lines in the sand. And that's all I have to say about that. And now we're going to recap AEW and their special and beautiful tribute to Brodie Lee. Okay, so I'm going to recap this episode of AEW, but not in a critical way, because this was a tribute episode to the late Brodie Lee, who clearly meant a lot to a lot of people in the wrestling business as a whole. And AEW did possibly one of the best tribute episodes I've ever seen in my life. And I actually enjoyed the action from top to bottom, but it was definitely more of a show to show how much they really loved Brodie Lee. So instead of really talking about the women and then the men like I normally do, I'm going to talk about the show from the top to the bottom, from beginning to end. So you can know what my experience was while watching it. It was very emotional, because the first time I had ever really seen Brodie Lee, it was when he was Luke Harper in the Wyatt family in WWE with Eric Rowan and Bray Wyatt. And then, of course, they added on Braun Strowman towards the later part of their run. And when the Wyatt family was split up, he also was a part of the tag team with Eric Rowan called the Bludgeon Brothers. And they worked with the New Day and actually beat them for the SmackDown tag team titles. And as Luke Harper, he was able to become Intercontinental Champion. And that was really most of my experience with him. I didn't know that he was in the Indies until this past weekend. And I heard a lot about his work in AEW, and how he became the TNT champion and his beef with Cody Rhodes and all of that. And I know a lot of people were definitely kind of upset when he wound up losing the TNT title back to Cody. And, Cody wound up retaining, and then we wound up not seeing him on television for a while, and now we understand why. So the show started with Jim Ross saying Brodie Lee's signature catchphrase, saying, "It's Wednesday, and you know what that means." And the entire AEW roster, along with Amanda Huber and -1, Brodie Lee Jr., were standing on the stage, and they stood silent for a 10-bell salute. And Brodie Jr. was wearing a Dark Order mask. And after the 10-bell salute, they cut to a video of Jon Moxley talking about how hard it was to come up with the right words to pay tribute to Brodie Lee. And he talked about how they've known each other for over 10 years and how they have fought in bingo halls and in stadiums together. So basically, they had known each other for so very long, and they grew to become these wrestlers who fought in the independent circuits in like the smaller places where there are not that many people who will come to their shows, or a good bit of people, to now wrestling in stadiums and stuff like that, like where they are in Jacksonville, Florida. I believe it's called Daly's Place, but I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but I think that's what it's called. So he talked about how Brodie Lee loved being a father, and how he told him that when he found out that Renee, his wife, was pregnant, he said, "You're gonna love being a dad." And he said, and then Jon Moxley was like, "You sure? Because I kind of like being able to do whatever I want." But he said, "You're gonna love it." And so he also talked about him and said, by saying that he loved him like a brother and that he'll never forget him. But then he also talked about how pro wrestling, which I thought was very poignant and fit, what's been going on lately. He said that pro wrestling is more than just a sport. It's a community, it's people from all over the world, coming together, to love this one thing, which is sports entertainment. And I appreciated what he said, because here lately we've just been sort of going back and forth about what thing is better than another thing, and it really shouldn't just be about that. It should be all about how we should come together and love each other over this one sport that we absolutely love. And I appreciated everything that he said. It was very heartfelt, and you can tell he really meant it. And then the first match kicked off with Matt Hardy and Private Party, which I have lots of fun saying because they rhyme. Hardy Gang, taking on Colt Cabana, whose nickname I learned is Boom Boom, and the Young Bucks, who I believe are the AEW Tag Team Champions. And Colt Cabana really impressed me in this match. But before I get to how much he impressed me in this match, Colt Cabana started and Isaiah Cassidy both started for their teams. And you can tell that Colt Cabana was trying to hang on to whatever bit of emotions that he had, because he came out with the Dark Order, and he was really sad. They were all, looking as emotional as you would expect them to be, because of course they lost their leader, because Brodie Lee was the leader of the Dark Order faction. And he was looking like he was really trying to hold back tears, but he still had a job to do. So the Young Bucks and Colt Cabana kept the upper hand for a long time, and then sent Matt Hardy out of the ring with a triple drop kick. And then the rest of the match unfolded like a typical six-man contest. They had their multiple sequences. They were trading punches back and forth with double team moves. The Young Bucks are always, like, anytime I do see the Young Bucks fight, they really do impress me, and I'm never bored watching them ever, and it was really good. But I was really surprised with Colt Cabana dominating as well as he did, doing all kinds of backflips and amazing acrobatic things, because I was just like, man, like, because every time I'd ever seen Colt Cabana, it was always in the podcasting space or in the interview space, like on Ring of Honor. So I never really saw him wrestle, but he was amazing. So it was just a really good match. But then Colt Cabana scored the win after the Young Bucks hit the Meltzer driver, and he followed up with a Superman dive into the pin. And then they put the camera on Brodie Jr. Cheering, after the match and stuff. And it kept choking me up every time they were showing him, because it's just the fact that he was there, and I know they wanted him there to have a good time and for him to have fun so he can forget for a minute everything that's going on. And that's one of the best things that you could ever do for a child right there, while losing a parent. Like, you can tell that AEW really pulled together, and they're becoming this beautiful family for him if they already weren't a family for him. So it was really beautiful. Then the Acclaimed came out and then complained about the Dark Order dominating the show. But then SCU showed up and then threw them into the ring so Colt Cabana and the Bucks, could fight them. Then you had another match with Lance Archer, Stu Grayson, and Evil Uno versus Eddie Kingston, the Butcher, and the Blade. So before this match, Darby Allin spoke and talked about how he met Brodie Lee when he debuted in AEW and immediately wanted to wrestle with him. He said he told, whoever he was talking to, it doesn't matter, what I do, first in this company, I want to wrestle him. And he was just bound and determined to do that. And he said that Brodie Lee had no ego and he wanted to elevate everybody. And he always wanted to pick Brodie's brain because he was always so willing to share. And I thought that was a nice story to tell, but I did feel a certain kind of way because he was also one of the ones on social media who was beefing up the whole narrative of one promotion doing the better tribute than the other, and I just felt some type of way about that, but that's not about that right now. Then Lance Archer came out in jeans and a tank top, dressed up like the Luke Harper character that Brodie Lee had in WWE, which I thought was a really nice touch. And then Eddie Kingston grabbed a microphone and said that he loved and missed Brodie, but then he went into heel mode and said that the Dark Order was nothing without him and that they're gonna, continue to lose and fall into mediocrity and stuff like that. But he didn't say that, but that's just the gist of what he said. Then Evil Uno attacked Eddie Kingston before the bell to kick off a big brawl between everyone. And this was where I kind of learned more about all of these wrestlers, because I hadn't really seen them really fight before because I don't really watch AEW a whole lot. But this match was still very entertaining and impressive. And after the match ended, the Dark Order team wound up winning. After the match ended, AEW played a tribute video with lots of people sharing their thoughts on Brodie. Cash Wheeler, Arn Anderson, Colt Cabana, and Bryce Remsburg spoke about how great of a family man he was and how he should be on a Mount Rushmore of wrestling dads, because he was just so, as much as he loved wrestling, he was always trying to, get away so he could be with his family and be with his kids and his wife. And that was really nice to hear and listen to. Then we had, Hangman Page and Alex Reynolds and John Silver versus MJF, Santana, and Ortiz of the Inner Circle. I believe that's the name of their team. I'm sorry, guys. I really don't watch this that much. So John Silver wore his own version of Brodie Lee's Dark Order attire and for the match, and MJF actually had the Puerto Rican flag on his trunks because, he's been welcomed into the fold of the Inner Circle with them. So Silver and Silver and Alex Reynolds, threw some paper at their opponents as a reference to what Brodie Lee would do to them on Being the Elite. And I thought that was a nice little tribute. And then MJF rolled out of the ring and yelled at Brodie Jr. And then -1 just stood, resilient and just, looked at him like, whatever, dude. And I thought I kind of felt like that was a little bit much because I was just like, MJF, I'm going to need for you to chill and not yell in this little boy's face right now. It was just very sensitive for me, but I know he was just doing it because he likes to heal everything up because that's just him. So this match was very steady with its pace, and then the teamwork was on both sides was really crisp. Johnny got the hot tag when we returned from a commercial break and went on a rampage, and then he single-handedly took out everyone on the opposing team, and then he hit some great spots before MJF hit him with the Heat Seeker. And then Santana and Ortiz tried to pin him, but then Reynolds made the save. And then Wardlow took Reynolds down, and Eric Redbeard, the former Eric Rowan, came out and took him out of the equation. And I thought this was amazing. This seriously surprised me. Like, I was I was sitting down in my living room taking down a Christmas tree, and then all of a sudden I see Eric Rowan show up on the TV, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Eric. And I just freaked out, and I was just really emotional because I'm just like, oh my God, the Wyatt brother. No, it was just too much for me. And then MJF ripped the mask off of Brodie Jr., and then Brodie Jr. hit him with a kendo stick. And this made me laugh really hard because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I love how they're just letting him be a part of the story. Like, go Brodie Jr., go. I love him, and I want nothing but great things for him. And then the match ended with Silver, Reynolds, and Paige getting the win. And then Eric Rowan, who's also known as Eric Redbeard, joined them in the ring with a sign for Brodie Lee. And it said, goodbye for now, my brother. I'll see you soon, or I'll see you down the road. And it was really emotional because I think that's what he posted on Instagram. And they started crying and they were hugging each other. It was so beautiful. And I think this was one of the points in which I cried because it was just like, man, like, you can tell they were really feeling it. And Brodie Lee Jr. did such a good job with hitting MJF in the head with the kendo stick. So it was just really beautiful. Then Eddie Kingston was featured in a video, and he was telling everyone how he felt about Brodie Lee and how much he'll miss him, and how much he'll miss ribbing him backstage and telling him he looks like Harry Potter. And he was crying and stuff, and it was a lot. Then we had the girls match between Anna Jay and Taynara Conti. I'm going to always call her Taynara. It's just what I'm used to calling her. Versus Britt Baker and Penelope Ford. And Anna Jay, who's also in the Dark Order, came out with Taynara, and her and Britt Baker started the match with some chain wrestling, and they managed to get some offense in before Conti tagged in. And this match was a good pace as well, and it was a little bit slower than the 6-man bouts that we had seen earlier in the night. Taynara and Anna Jay had a really great unit going, with their tag team continuity. But then Ford and Baker worked really well as a unit too, and they had heel tactics down, like they've been working together a whole lot. But then Anna Jay, who's also known as 99, as Brodie Lee would call her, got the hot tag when we returned from a commercial break, and she hit a series of moves before having Penelope Ford stop her momentum. And then Conti dealt with Ford, leaving Jay and Baker in the ring together. And then Anna Jay signaled to the sky and then gave the Dark Order gesture with tears in her eyes. And then she caught Penelope Ford with a moonsault and then locked in a sleeper hold for the victory, while Taynara Conti kept Britt Baker at bay. So they celebrated after they won the match, and they were both crying and hugging one another because the emotions were really high. And then Tony Schiavone came in the ring and interviewed Britt Baker after the match. And she said that this whole match was rigged and it was a big conspiracy, and that it was just seriously a really big rig. And she was doing that to pay tribute to Brodie Lee because in the indie circuit, his wrestler name was Big Rig. And she winked at the camera and pointed up at the sky. And then as she was getting ready to walk away, Thunder Rosa came out and attacked her before officials broke them up. And it's always good to see Thunder Rosa. Hey, girl. So, then we have Team Taz versus 10, Cody Rhodes and Orange Cassidy. And this was a match that Brodie Lee Jr. actually booked himself, which was another means of them giving him more to do in terms of, well, not more to do, but giving him stuff to do in terms of wrestling, which sort of, did my heart good. And they showed a video of Chris Jericho talking about a story where they were in Saudi Arabia together, and how Brodie Lee told him about how they have arrows on their roof, on the roofs of their buildings pointing towards Mecca. And he said that Brodie spent the last 6 months of his career proving that he was a main event star. And he said that his unfriendly dog, who doesn't take kindly to visitors, loved Brodie from the first time that the dog met him. And it was kind of, heartfelt to hear Chris Jericho talk about it. Actually, I just like hearing Chris Jericho talk about wrestling, period. He just has a really calming and soothing voice whenever he does talk about wrestling on the serious tip, because of course, he's a legend. He knows a lot about the business. And then he was also making me laugh while he was on commentary that night too. It was really funny. So this match was really good. When Orange Cassidy came out, he gave Brodie Jr. a hang bump before the match ended. And I thought it was funny how the way that Orange Cassidy is introduced, he says, "From wherever, Wang, whatever." And it's just really funny. So Cody started off against Starks, and then they traded chops back and forth in the corner before Cody went down for a drop kick. 10 reluctantly took the tag and then entered the match. But then when Hobbs tagged in, he only wanted to fight Orange Cassidy. And every time I see Powerhouse Hobbs, I think about Sir Wilkins of the Jobbers Heroes podcast and how he talks about Hobbs so much with so much enthusiasm. And I just think about how he says his last name. Oh, it's Hobbs. And he just says it so hard, and he just loves it so much. And I love him so much. Then after everyone on Team Taz spent some time beating up on Orange Cassidy, Cody came in and then turned the tables against Ricky Starks. And then we got to the part where everyone came in and took somebody else out. And it ended with 10 hitting Cage with a short arm clothesline before Starks hit a tornado DDT for a 2 count. But then Cassidy, Cody, and 10 took turns hitting their finishers on Starks to get the win. And then 10 hugged his partners for the night and threw up the Dark Order symbol before Team Taz came back and beat up on them for revenge. And then they beat up everybody before the lights dropped. And then Darby Allin's music hit. He's still the TNT champion. And then he was soon joined by Sting with the bat and in the snow. And it was cool. And then they made their way to the ring, and stood with 10, Cody, and Cassidy to end the segment. So I'm guessing that Sting and Darby Allin, have some more of a bone to pick with Team Taz. So I guess we'll see more of that, next week, I guess. And the show came to a beautiful end because Cody was in the ring and he was talking about how hard it was to write the memo letting everyone know that Brodie had passed away. And he spoke about how every single person in AEW loved Brodie Lee, and he almost cried as he introduced Brodie Jr. with his very own entrance with Brodie Lee's theme music. And it's always hard to see Brodie Lee not Brodie Lee, but it was really hard to see Cody Rhodes be that emotional, because I've seen him cry multiple times, like when he was in WWE about certain things. And it's just like, he's one of those people where it's like, once I see a person cry, I just start crying immediately. So it was just really hard. And then Brodie Jr. came out with his mother, Amanda, and they set Brodie's boots down in the middle of the ring and covered it with a purple bandana. And then the AEW president, Tony Khan, appeared and presented a -1 with the TNT championship. And they retired it in its current form and named him the TNT champion for life and called him the greatest TNT champion that ever lived. And his dad, the greatest TNT champion that ever lived. And then they presented a video package which paid tribute to Lee and his wrestling and showed clips of him with being the elite and clips of him in the indie circuit and pictures of him with his family. And it was just really beautiful. And it was really hard because you saw one of the members of the Dark Order, I believe it was 10, or it may have been someone else in a mask, holding her and hugging her as she was crying and breaking down. And it was so hard. Like, this is where I just had to let go and I just started crying, because I can't imagine losing your husband who's like your absolute best friend. Like, I can't imagine losing my boyfriend like that. Like, that would really destroy me. And I know that he and I aren't married yet, but I know that in the event that once we do get married, I just can't imagine ever losing him, like that in any way, shape, or form. And then having to deal with it, and also having to raise these two young children, who have to now navigate life without their dad. Like, that's just so hard. And my heart goes out to anybody who's had to go through that, through losing a parent, whether it be at a young age or whether it be as an adult. Like, it's not an easy thing to deal with. And my heart goes out to the Huber family and all of the friends of Brodie Lee, who are currently going through this loss right now. And I hope that the new year brings, nothing but blessings and happiness to them, as they're navigating this new normal without Brodie Lee. And I hope that his transition was peaceful, and I hope that wherever he is, he has peace and love, and he's surrounded by light and everything that he needs in the next life. And that's the end of this AEW recap. Okay, and for our last weekly recap, I'm going to talk about SmackDown. A lot happened tonight, but we're just going to start with talking about the women. So there was a tag team match between the Riot Squad and Tamina and Natalya, even though it was kind of confusing because I think it was you had Billie Kay come out and she was sort of dressed in her gear to fight, but then she entered, she was backed by Tamina, who and she was backed up by Tamina, who wanted to use Natalya as a partner instead. So once the momentum was swung, it was just kind of like Billie Kay just kept running to manage the Riot Squad, but then she was running to also manage Tamina and Natalya, but they just kept, brushing her off like they didn't want her there. And she continued to sort of switch sides until, her involvement distracted Tamina and allowed Liv Morgan to roll up Tamina for the win. And I feel like, honestly, that the Riot Squad should honestly be the next people in line to face Charlotte and Asuka for the women's tag team titles, because they're back together now. Like, there's so much more they could be doing, but it's like Corey Graves was saying tonight, maybe they just feel like slow and steady wins the race as opposed to just, having like a straight shot towards it. So we'll see what happens with that. But then I also feel a little bit confused as to what Billie Kay is doing. It's like, she could be wrestling in a tag team, but then she could also be a manager maybe for another tag team. I don't know, but I still feel like her and Peyton Royce both have been sort of lost ever since they've been broken up. And I feel like I'm trying to trust that they have something for both of them to do. But here lately, it's like you haven't seen Peyton Royce on television, and you see Billie Kay on television more, but she's not really doing anything that has like a clear cut point. So we'll see. I don't know. Then you also had Carmella and Bayley versus Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks in their tag team match. And this match was pretty good considering Sasha Banks and Bianca wanted to get revenge on Bayley and Carmella for messing up their chances of winning the women's tag team titles on Christmas Day. And I think one of the best takeaways I got from this match was definitely that Bianca Belair is always ready to show and shine, no matter who she's facing. And that her and Bayley are going to have a pretty heated, one-on-one match whenever they do get to have that exchange. And that Sasha Banks and Carmella's program isn't over just yet. And this match was really good. But I think the part that irritated me the most was Reggie. Like, I understand that he's supposed to be like her sommelier, but it felt like he just got bolder and bolder in Sasha Banks's face as she kept trying to fight, Carmella. And then it's like every time she would reach for him, he would flip out of the way or whatever. And it's like, I understand you're athletic or whatever, but I feel like in 2021, something that needs to be established is men staying out of women's business. Like, literally, stay out of women's business. And it gets on my nerves how Carmella just utilizes all these men. Like, at first it was James Ellsworth, and now she's using Reggie to win these matches. And I'm like, ma'am, you don't even need him. You don't need him in your business to help you win matches. Like, how do you feel knowing that you can't win anything or do anything without a penis present? Like, how does that feel? But either way. And because of this distraction, Carmella took out Banks, for the win. So I guess now her and Carmella are still beefing with each other. And then there's always that underlying anger that Sasha has at Bayley. And Bayley was still trying to, pick at her while also picking at Bianca. And there was even this cool point where Bianca even, tried to help Sasha tag in, with her braid. But then, Bianca, actually, no, Bayley grabbed a hold of the braid, but then because she grabbed a hold of the braid, she ran Bayley into the ring post. And I was just like, that's exactly what you get for being a Karen and touching a black woman's hair. Boom. Anyway, also in terms of women, Sonya Deville made her return after losing her loser leaves WWE match at SummerSlam against Mandy Rose. And she was walking backstage and everybody was kind of staring at her like, oh my God, she's back. And I was really excited as they were saying that she was reinstated. So I'm just like, girl, who is she finna fight? I was thinking maybe she was going to be on Raw. But I mean, her on SmackDown is pretty cool too. So hey, Daddy Sonya is back and I'm glad. So that's pretty much all that happened with the women. So now with the men, the show started with Roman Reigns doing an in-ring promo talking about that everything he touches turns to gold, and how and he was singling out Paul Heyman and Jey Uso as proof of this. And he talked about how he had saved Paul Heyman from being cast aside by WWE while elevating Uso to the best year of his, singles career and a position as a true main event talent. And I guess he was setting him up for some type of present or something, or some type of treatment, special treatment or something. But then Kevin Owens came and interrupted Roman Reigns while he was talking. And he said that, but then Roman Reigns objected and said that nobody cares what Owens has to say after losing to him twice. And then Kevin said that his appearance on the show proves that Roman Reigns and Uso failed in their attempts to destroy him. But then he also said that he didn't want anything to do with Roman Reigns tonight, but he wanted to face Jey Uso in the ring and demanded it would happen later on in the show. And he made a passionate appeal to Adam Pearce, who seemed kind of hesitant to create the match because it seemed like he wanted him to fight somebody else. But then Kevin Owens was talking about how he had known Adam Pearce for years, and you ought to know, I forgot what he was saying. In terms of knowing Adam Pearce and all of the aggression that he had towards Jey Uso. But Pearce made the match, and then Roman Reigns demanded that Paul Heyman find out who disrespected him enough to allow the match to be made. And then Paul Heyman told him later on that it was Adam Pearce who made it. And then he told Jey Uso to go out there, and prove, why you're the main event guy now. And it's almost like maybe Roman Reigns has some pent-up aggression towards Adam Pearce, and maybe he might set up some type of attack towards him. I don't know. It just felt really scary the way he was doing that. But then it also felt scary how Adam Pearce felt hesitant about it, because normally he would be, saying, of course, you get a match, like Oprah. But he felt really hesitant this time, and I thought that was strange. But yeah. Then we had Big E fighting King Corbin. And of course, Big E is looking to sort of go on his momentum from winning the Intercontinental Championship from Sami Zayn last week on Christmas. And it was just, and this match was pretty good. You had a lot of athleticism from the both of them. I was definitely impressed with how Big E did that belly to belly suplex. Like, he did like 3 of them on King Corbin, and that was cool. But the match ended via disqualification because Sami Zayn was on commentary. He ran in to break the pin after Big E hit the big ending on Corbin. And even Corbin's Knights of the Lone Wolf ran in and tried to beat up on Big E at some point. But then they ran in attacking Big E until Apollo Crews ran in to make the save. And this led to a tag team match. And I felt like this was kind of unfair because you kind of had Big E, and Apollo Crews, as a two-man group. And then you have Corbin with his other two dudes and Sami Zayn. So I was just like, this is still kind of unfair. But it actually wound up, working in favor of Big E and Apollo Crews because Sami Zayn was running his mouth, and he wound up making King Corbin and the Knights of the Lone Wolf walk away from him as he kept screaming, "I don't need you, I don't need you." And then Apollo Crews wound up getting the win on him, during the match. But he was just arguing, and his mouth was writing a check that his butt couldn't cash, per usual. And then later on in the show, Big E was talking backstage, with Kayla Braxton about how he's celebrated with different people, and he named people like Amanda's, and he mentioned the real name of one of Brodie Lee's sons, and he did that to pay tribute to Brodie Lee because he was very emotional on Twitter about him passing away as well. And he was also one of the many superstars who had on Brodie armbands on because Bayley had one on, Sasha had one on, Big E had one on, I believe Daniel Bryan had one on as well, and Cesaro too. So it was just really a nice gesture. But then he issued an open challenge for the Intercontinental Championship because he wanted to be a fighting champion. And Apollo Crews accepted it and said he was going to fight him next week, as Big E laughed in his face, which only means that Big E is going to destroy you. So that was really cool. Then the Street Profits hosted a New Year's Day Smoketacular, and they were offering up predictions for 2021, mocking, Sami Zayn and saying that their I Was Intercontinental Championship t-shirts would sell and become the #1 seller on WWEshop.com. And then they also made fun of Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler and called Dolph Ziggler the Heartache Kid, by saying that he really is a Shawn Michaels cosplayer, which is true. He kind of is. And so as they were making fun of them, and as Angelo was playing the drums, and he called it this lunch table rhythm real quick, and I thought that was really cool because, I mean, how many times have we been in, and we are, as black kids anyway, we're in school and saw someone, banging a drum beat on the lunch table or on their desk. Like, that was really cool. But then they got attacked by Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler, and they came in acting, rougher, and they started beating on Montez Ford's leg with a chair, and they tossed out Angelo Dawkins and basically attacked the both of them to prove now that they're the dirty dogs and they have t-shirts made and that they really want those SmackDown tag titles. And it was just like, whatever. Then we had Daniel Bryan and Otis versus Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura. And this match came about because as Daniel Bryan was helping Otis train or whatever with Chad Gable, Cesaro and Shinsuke were making fun of Daniel Bryan, wanting to be in the Royal Rumble because he said that was the one match that he hadn't won yet. And I thought it was so funny that they were making fun of him, but yet Daniel Bryan, actually wound up winning the world title without having to win a Royal Rumble match, whereas Cesaro has never won a world title before. And actually, neither has Shinsuke Nakamura, if we're getting technical. He won the Royal Rumble match and still didn't win the world title. So, I mean, y'all throwing shade, but Daniel Bryan is the champion out here. So, yeah. This match was pretty good. It showed a lot of their athleticism, and then Otis was able to sort of hold his own and yell out Happy New Year in 2021 after he hit his whole Caterpillar deal. And Bryan put Shinsuke in the label lock to win the match. So that was a pretty good match going forward. And then Kevin Owens went on to defeat Jey Uso via pinfall after a stunner. And it was a brawl from the jump, but Owens took things overboard and kept his attack focused on Jey Uso's leg. And then Owens would finish off Uso after a stunner before turning to the camera and asked, "Where are you, Roman?" And then he kept beating up Jey Uso as he had promised. And it seemed like Owens was sort of picking at the whole scab of, "Oh, this is your family, but you're not coming out to help him. You're not coming out to help him, Roman. Where you at, though?" It was a lot. And then Owens handcuffed Jey Uso to the ropes before hitting him with a super kick, all while continuing to call for Roman Reigns to show some pride and save his family. And then Owens took Uso to the entrance ramp and it was about to put Jey Uso through a table when Roman Reigns attacked and jumped on him on the platforms where the LED boards are, where the fans can watch through the Thunderdome screens. And Uso and Reigns then proceeded to beat up Roman Reigns with a pair of steel chairs and threw him from the LED board area into the table to end the show. And what's so funny is the fact that after he threw him through the table, Roman Reigns was standing over him and said, "Happy New Year." And I was just like, you dastardly demon. He just ain't got no chill no more. Only a savage would wish you Happy New Year after beating you and throwing you through the table. That's how head of tables do. I love Roman Reigns. That's the end of this recap for SmackDown. Okay, so thank you for listening to this special episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. This is the first episode of the new year, and I'm really glad to be doing this now. I'm really happy and thankful to see another year and to be alive to experience hopefully a better year than 2020 was in some spaces. So if you want to follow me, like as always, you can follow me on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast, and you can follow me on Twitter at Hardy WrestlePod. And you can also follow the Facebook page at Hardy Wrestling with Stephanie Hardy. If you have any questions you want to ask me, you can always DM me. Or if you want to do an interview with me, you can always DM me as well. I'll be more than happy to share some space with you on my show if you're a fan, if you're a wrestler, if you're a professional camera person, if you take pictures, or if you're a ring announcer or a wrestling podcaster. I'll be more than happy to share some space on my show with you. Please come on. Hopefully a lot of big things will be happening this year. My 1-year anniversary show is coming up because that ties right into Royal Rumble season. So that's going to be cool. If you have any ideas for me and anything you want me to talk about on my first anniversary show, please let me know. So in the meantime, I hope you're taking care of yourselves and being good to yourselves this year. If you set any resolutions and goals, I hope you meet them this year. And I hope you had a great holiday season and it's good to finally get back to work and do everything that we're meant to do in this space. And I hope we have a fantastic year full of happiness and healthiness and just all around light that we seriously need. So thank you for listening to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. And until next time, bye y'all.